Islam, Mo, I'm out and about.
Okay, Islam, General, how you be?
You hear me?
Islam, I can hear you. Can you hear me? Can you hear me, General?
My daughter got arrested.
Oh, man.
I'm trying to go in and see what's going on.
Islam. You can hear me?
No, I can't even hear you though.
You can't hear me?
Oh, I can hear you now.
Islam. Okay, you handling that?
Yeah. I'm gonna turn the
Islam.
control over to you.
Okay. I got it.
Everything is live though.
Islam.
So,
Gratitude.
Islam Moors,
Islam, minister. How you be?
all is well.
Praise Allah.
Praise Allah. How was your trip?
No, this Friday coming up. Not until Friday the 18th. Yeah.
Oh,
Islam Morris.
Islam, guys.
Islam.
I'm out and about, but I'll be listening in.
Islam.
Peace.
Islam.
Oh,
Mr.
man,
Anwar.
I love that hoodie, man. Hey, what you say, man? I love that hoodie. Why you didn't get me an Acadamey one?
Uh,
They didn't have them in that big size.
I figured you was gonna say that.
Yeah, I tried, but they didn't have no quadruple X's. I got it from offline, the Facebook thing.
they just had small man sizes, huh?
Very small, man.
It's long. It's long.
Small.
We can go ahead and get started. It's 9. Yeah, with the prayer, Mr. Anwar.
Islam. Once again, I rise, giving perfect praise to the great God of Allah, honor to his prophets, honor to the last prophet in these days and time, Prophet Noble Ali. I give honor to the Royal Council of the Moorish American government, all the officials, all the citizens. Give honor where honor is due. Give honor to all of you. Give honor to this Maryland Council Zoom meeting and everyone in attendance. Islam. Moorish American prayer. Allah, the Father of the universe, the Father of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Allah is my protector, my guide, and my salvation, by night and by day, through his holy prophet, Drew Ali. Amen.
Islam, Islam, Islam. Islam, everyone. I am Terrell Freemanell of the Maryland Consulate, rising and giving praise to the great God Allah, Father of the universe. Nice honors to his prophet, our prophet, Noble Drew Ali El-Hajj Sharif Abdul Ali. I want to give high honors to our Moorish American government, our Moorish American theocratic government. I want to give high honors to all officials and all citizens of our Moorish American government. I want to give high honors to the indigenous nation of Moorish America. I want to give high honors to all children of Moorish America. I want to give high honors to everyone in attendance and everyone of the human family, Islam. Salvation, our God, unity. The divine constitution of Moorish America. Act 1. The Grand Sheikh and the chairman of Moorish America are empowered to make law and enforce laws with the assistance of the Prophet and the grand body of Moorish America. The assistant Grand Sheikh is to assist the Grand Sheikh in all affairs if he lives according to love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice, and it is known before the citizens of Moorish America. The bylaws, Act 2. All meetings are to be open and closed promptly according to the Circle 7 and love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Friday is our holy day of rest because on the Friday the first man was formed in flesh, and on a Friday the first man departed out of flesh and ascended unto his Father God Allah. For that cause, Friday is the holy day for all Muslims all over the world. Act 3. Love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice must be proclaimed and practiced by all citizens of Moorish America. No citizen is to put in danger or accuse falsely his brother or sister on any occasion at all that may harm his brother or sister, because Allah is love. Act 4. All citizens must preserve these holy and divine laws, and all citizens must obey the laws of the government. Because by being a Moorish American, you are a part and parcel of the government and must live the life accordingly. Act 5. No organization of Moorish America is to cause any confusion or to overthrow the laws and constitution of the said government, but to obey hereby. Act 6. With us, all citizens must proclaim their nationality, and we are teaching our people their nationality and their divine creed, that they may know that they are a part and a parcel of this said government, and know that they are not Negroes, colored folk, Black people, or Ethiopians, because these names were given to slaves by slaveholders in 1779 and lasted until 1865 during the time of slavery. But this is a new era of time now, and all men now must proclaim their free national name to be recognized by the government in which they live and the nations of the earth. This is the reason why Allah, the great God of the universe, ordained Noble Drew Ali the Prophet to redeem his people from their sinful ways. The Moorish Americans are the descendants of the ancient Moabites whom inhabited the northwestern and southwestern shores of Africa. Act 7. All citizens must promptly attend their meetings and become a part and a partial of all uplifted acts of Moorish America. Moorish Americans must pay their dues and keep in line with all necessities of Moorish America, and then you are entitled to the name of faithful. Husband, you must support your wife and children. Wife, you must obey your husband and take care of your children and look after the duties of your household. Sons and daughters must obey father and mother and be industrious and become a part of the uplifting of fallen humanity. All Moorish Americans must keep their hearts and minds pure with love and their bodies clean with water. This divine covenant is from your holy prophet, Noble Drew Ali, through the guidance of his father God Allah. Prophet Noble Drew Ali, peace and blessings be upon him, founding father and framer of the divine constitution and bylaws of Moorish America. And now this meeting has been opened according to law. We say Islam, Islam, Islamism. Welcome, everyone.
Islam, Islam, Islam. I am Nicole Williams, El-Bey of the Maryland Consulate. I rise giving praise to the universe. High honors to our ancestors. High honors to our prophet, Noble Drew Ali. Honors to all the Moors here, there, and everywhere. This morning, grand rising, I should say, to everyone. We are going to relax. Again, we're going to practice the baby Buddha belly, where on the inhale, we will allow our abdomen or stomach to expand, and we will exhale with 3 shorter breaths. Islam. Islam.
Islam, Islam, Islam. First, I want to rise and praise Almighty God Allah. I want to give honor to our holy prophet, Noble Drew Ali. I want to give honor to the indigenous nation and theocratic government of Moorish America. I want to give honor to our divine constitution of Moorish America. I want to give honor to Act 1 of said constitution. I want to give honor to all officials in Moorish America. I want to give honor to all citizens in Moorish America, and I want to give a special honor to our children, our babies in Moorish America. I want to give honors to all of our Moors who opened our meeting according to law. I want to give honors where honors are due. I want to give honors to each and every one of you who are joining us for our Young Goddesses and Gods Education and Truth Saturday Zoom Academy. High honors to all the Moors who have joined us. Also, all of our family who are watching us on Facebook. And please, Moors on the panel and on Facebook, please share this on your Facebook pages so we can get this message out about love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice, and also, our nation. Once again, gratitude, Moors, for coming out for week 19 of our Saturday Zoom Academy. I am Sheikh Ashby Bey, Vice Consul General of the Maryland Consulate. Once again, this is week 19. The title for today's class, and this is a special class, Moors. It's definitely special because of this month that we happen to be in, that they call so-called Black History Month. So this is a special class that we will be presenting today. The title for today's class, Where Did White People Come From? The objective, to understand where this mythical race, in parentheses, white people, came from. We have several words to define: legal status, albinism, Negro, Black, colored. Coming from several resources, our divine constitution of Moorish America, Act 6, also chapter 70, coming from our Holy Quran of Moorish America, Circle 7, chronological order. Once again, that's chapter 70, the end of time and the fulfilling of the prophecies. That's on page 63 and 64. We'll have two YouTube videos that we will be viewing, and we don't own the rights to these videos, and we are using them for educational purposes. The first video is called "The First White Man Was Black." The second video, "Birth of a White Nation." So once again, Moors, when we look at other scholars and other writings, we see that they are still using these terms that delude to slavery, terms that put one group as superior to another, and we don't demonstrate that here in Moorish America. We understand that this so-called white man, we call him a European, and our people are Moors, but you will hear our people refer themselves as to Black and African American, but we know that these are misnomers. So when we hear these labels, understand we talk about Moors. When you hear the term white person, you're talking about a European. Our discussion question that will be on the floor when the floor is open: do we see how the European created and placed himself at the top of his game? And in parentheses, that game is the race game. Once again, the discussion question: do we see how the European created and placed himself at the top of his game, the race game? So Our Counsel General, Dr. Malik El-Bey, is on a mission, but is whenever he wants to come on board and interject anything, just raise your hand, General. So we're going to get started with our vocabulary words. And any Moors who wants to give their portion, definitely raise your hand. And our first word is legal status. Legal status. Islam, legal status. The definition that I have for legal status, the status defined by law, it is the standing of an entity. For example, citizenship and marital status. Citizenship is the status of a citizen with rights and duties. Marital status is the condition of being married or unmarried. Islam. We got Minister Ali L's hand up.
Islam was, having already risen, legal status, the rights, duties, capacities, and incapacities which determine a person to a given class. Islam.
Islam, gratitude for that grand measure. And understand that when you dealing with the status of a people, the legal status of a people, and we look at these misnomers that were put on our people, Negro, Black, colored, African American, because African American is a misnomer. It actually means nothing according to law, and we look at what they call themselves white. See, these are legal status, and white is a legal status in the United States of America as the dominant superior people. And of course, if white is the dominant superior status, then what would black be? What would Negro? What would colored? What would African American be? So within this term legal status, you see the race game in effect. Because all men are created equal. All mankind, all human beings are equal. So how do these different statuses come into effect? It's because what's the prophet say? General opinion is no proof of truth. But if enough people say, okay, I'm gonna go with this, then that's a general opinion. But it doesn't mean that it's true. Islam, General, you got your hand up?
Yeah, Islam. First and foremost, I rise and give praise to Almighty God, Allah, and giving honor to our holy prophet, our illustrious prophet, Prophet Noble Jew Ali, El-Haj Sharif Abdul Ali, that is. I'm going to give honor to our theocratic government of Moorish America, give honor to all of our officials of Moorish America, give honor to all of our children, especially our children, for they are the guidance of our nation, the new guidance of our nation, upcoming guidance of our nation. I'm going to also give honor to all of our people all over the planet Earth for being indigenous to this land, to the planet Earth, giving honor where honor is due, giving honor to this class, giving honor to all the instructors that took the time out to participate in this class. Because, a lot of people don't really care about how much you know until they realize how much you really care. That has a lot to do with how the law of correspondence is set in motion. What we reap, subhanAllah, what we reap, what we sow. So we only attract to us what we are. So we don't put the enthusiasm and things of that nature into our lessons. We, the people, only going to respond to us on what our mental attitude, based on our mental attitude is. That's why all instructors their heart have to be fixed. They got to be able to solve the fix, you understand? Because those 5 foes that we deal with, inconsistency, instability, and et cetera, oh, they're going to come at you. Or believe me, because it's your own carnal nature. However, to answer the question, I'm thinking in the form, in the direction of white not being so much a superior status. I'm looking at it from the point of view that white and black are just status. They don't have anything to do with color. They have to do with one happens to be the proper status and the one I'm gonna say like this, one is an inferior status and the other, if you're gonna say superior, we saying superior in the sense that it's not nobody thinking that they're better than somebody else. The superior status is God. Because Prophet Noble Drew Ali told us that white means purity, purity means God, God means ruler of the land. So when a person claims to be white, they fit in the area of those three: purity, God, or ruler of the land. Those who proclaim black, proclaim or set the law of correspondence into motion, and they claim just the opposite. See, your mind has a lot to do with your status and jurisdiction based on how you think. And this is why mental slavery is mental conditioning. So I just wanted to add that so our listeners won't think that when we talk about white and black and we talk about the race game, we want to give a clear conceptual understanding of what we are speaking about, opposed to getting caught up on the carnal aspect of things or getting caught up in our feelings. Islam, gratitude.
Islam, and gratitude for that grand measure, General. True and correct. These two status, they are only under the confines of this man's government, this society, United States society. Anywhere outside of that, they're not legal status, and it's only like you said, General, that term white is only superior in this man's government. Nowhere else, really, not even in this government. But it is definitely one is takes, in this man's system, one takes the back seat. So grand measure, General. Second term is Moore's albinism. Albinism. We got Brother Yisrael's hand up and Goddess Sasha L.
A person
Of pale,
of pale,
milky
milky
complexion
complexion
with light hair
with white hair
and pink eyes.
and pink eyes.
Islam. Grand measure, Mo. Grand measure. Goddess Sasha.
Islam. I am Sasha Ellen in New York Territory. First, I want to rise and give all praises to Allah, the Most High, honors to our Prophet, Noble Drew Ali, his forerunner Marcus Garvey, to the Moorish American government, to the Moors online, those that spoke before me, that will speak after me, to our divine constitution, and honors where all honors are due. Islam. Albinism. A congenital absence of pigment in the skin and hair and the eyes. People with albinism also they burn easily. And that's what I would say would make them colored. They have a much more skin disease and stuff like that, skin cancers and stuff. But Islam.
Islam, gratitude for that grand measure, Goddess. We got Minister Ali L's hand up.
Islam, having already risen. Albinism is a rare genetic condition caused by mutations of certain genes that affect the amount of melanin your body produces.
Islam, gratitude for that grand measure, Minister. All grand measures, I'm just going to add to those that this phenomenon of albinism, like all the other Moors demonstrated, it's a congenital absence of pigment coloring, or shading of the skin, hair, eyes, and modern science says that the albino gene mutated on Earth roughly 8,000 years ago. And it mutated on Earth in the caves up in Eurasia. And the Eurasia went from what we call the area of China now all the way to Great Britain. System of caves that spread across that entire area. And what happened is that Moors were up in Europe. Our people were the first people in Europe, all over the planet. And about 135,000 years ago, the climate changed drastically, and it changed within hours. It changed. That's how drastic it was. They said that modern scientists are unearthing woolly mammoths that still have food in their mouth and were still digesting the food, and they were frozen instantly. This is how quick this ice age happened 135,000 years ago. And people were all up in the areas that we call Britain, Europe, Scandinavia. And once again, 135,000 years ago, it was only people of darker hue on this planet. So the first Europeans were definitely Moors, Asiatics. So when this ice age hit, the people had nowhere to go but into the caves to protect themselves, because it was bitter cold. It was hundreds of degrees below zero, instantly. A lot of people perished. Some was able to make their way into these caves. And they stayed in these caves for 100,000 or more years without sunlight, without proper food, and that is how the Asiatics started to produce this albino gene, because the Asiatic with the darker hued skin was not able to get the nourishment from the sunlight. So something had to happen. Nature had to make some changes so that these people could survive. And that is when the adaptation happened. And then when the ice started to melt about, let's say, 7,000 or 8,000 years ago, and it still took time before those people to come down from the mountains into where everybody else was. When they finally came out, they had changed from a dark hue to these very light hue albino people. So this is where the origin of the European came from, this albino gene. So we got Goddess Sasha's hand up. Come on, Goddess.
Islam, praises and honors already given. I want to say about albinism too. When I asked Mormons before, because I was friends with Mormons, They say that it's a curse. That's what they say, a curse of the seed. I just looking at people with albinism, you can still tell the difference between them and us because we do still have color. Islam.
Islam. And gratitude for that measure, goddess. And we also know that the Bible say that darker people was cursed. All kind of stuff that when we are thinking rationally, we know, Allah don't curse. Allah is the God of love. Now maybe somebody demonstrated some kind of negativeness to the people or anything like that, but it wasn't Allah. If Allah created the universe and he's the father of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice, no, ain't no cursing going on there. We curse ourselves. So gratitude for that measure, because we got to get away, from that spookism. That's the kind of stuff that has us in the state that we are today. It has us afraid. It has us apprehensive. It has us looking at other people, in certain ways, and it's not productive. Especially if we talking about a clean and pure nation demonstrating love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice, and wanting to be a friend to mankind and hoping that mankind is friendly to them. So we, just gratitude for that measure, guys. We got Minister Freeman L's hand up.
Islam and gratitude. Islam, Islam, Islam. I'm Terrell Freeman L. of the Maryland Consulate. Praise and honors reiterated. The grand class and grand measures, especially I was motivated to chime in, camelback off the goddess El-Bey, and that grand measure she put forth. You gave a perfect segue into reminding us about what the great God Allah, what we know about the great God Allah and what we know about ourselves, but what we could go to, giving high honors to Prophet Noble Drew Ali, going back to chapter 1, we're discerning what this whole life thing is about, from the spirit on down to the flesh that covers my thumb. And in this contemporary time, even in contemporarily recognized Africa, we deal with albinism in this modern day and time. We have, we have brothers and sisters over there uplifting humanity as well. And this is, again, just amongst brothers and sisters, brothers and sisters, children that have albinism in certain communities and certain regions. Well, they are attacked not because of the reasons that were just put forth, the curse. No, they're attacked, they're hunted because people have some more spookism stuff about their condition. Why this effect from Allah? Why? What? This is what I think it is. And all of those things that end up coming from them end up being aspects of lower nature. And these are my brothers. These are my African brothers and sisters. No different than those impacted by albinism of the related situation. I have albinism or different aspects that have its connotations to albinism myself. However, folk, the reality of why we're having this class and the beauty of the holy breath that's coming through everyone is that we have the opportunity to be the truth. We don't have to leave it out there or leave it just a matter of these words, but the demonstration of an understanding of what truth is different than falsehood. This is, again, a part of what we're here to do. And this is a, wow, millennia old aspect that we are still perfecting inside us. But it's been done, and we're going to do it again too. So gratitude for all the instructors and all of the Mighty Moors with their grand measures. It's a heavy topic, but I feel the love all up and through this Islam.
Islam and gratitude for that measure, Deputy Grand Measure. You got your hand up, Minister Anwar?
Islam. Yeah, Islam. I just wanted to add, coming through the temple and Vice Chancellor, General, you heard it too about the Yaku experiment, and the Nation of Islam pushes this a lot. And it talked about this guy named Yaku. He was let me read a little bit of it. It says, in the belief of the Nation of Islam, Yaku, sometimes spelled Yaqub, was a Black scientist who lived 6,600 years ago and began to create the white race. He is said to have done this through a form of selective breeding, which is referred to as grafting, while he was living on the island of Patmos. I'll stop there. So you know, those mountains that you were talking about were the Caucasus Mountains, and that's where some people say the Europeans got that name Caucasian. Peace and love.
Islam and gratitude for that measure, Minister. Yeah, it's there's a lot of theories behind, and we hear that story of Yaqub and a scientist and in the laboratory creating, but when we do the research and we think about it logically, yeah, that laboratory was those caves, and that existence in those caves for such a long time without any sunlight, and see, albinism is not only something that happens in human beings, it happens in animals, mammals, it happens in fish, it happens in plants. Some plants don't have the green color that they supposed to. That's part of that albinism. So we plumbing this line because we are working on this title and this objective to learn, where did these mythical people called white people come from? This mythical race, and I say mythical because it's a myth. There's no truth to it, and so we're gonna go to our next word. Our last three words: Negro, then Black, then color. So the word Negro. Islam, Minister Freeman out.
Islam and gratitude. I'm Terrell Freeman out, praise and honors reiterated. For Negro, I of course think of Act 6 in our divine constitution and bylaws of Moorish America, where Prophet Noble Drew Ali reminds and tells us that that's one of the brands. That's one of the brands that was placed on my ancestors and some of my great grandparents on their birth certificates, et cetera, et cetera. And it was a brand. It was a slave name. It was a title that was to distinguish them from a thought of the great God Allah, from humanity itself. And that Negro, going into Negro, Black, which according to science means death, and which we can see and things and etymology continue. That's all I'm going to contribute at the moment. Gratitude. I'm fired up. Islam.
Islam. Gratitude, Mo man. We got Brother Yisrael and then Minister Anwar.
Say black,
Black,
dark,
dark,
dusky,
dusty,
apply to the night sky,
apply to the night sky.
a storm.
Get out here, Danielle. What
Come
you
on.
doing?
Okay, the storm. Okay, figuratively,
Figuratively,
gloomy,
gloomy,
unlucky,
unlucky,
bad,
bad,
wicked.
wicked.
Whoa. Gratitude for that grand measure, Brother Yisrael. Right on point with that. Come on, Minister Anwar.
Islam. Negro. Negro means black in both Spanish and Portuguese language. It derives from the Latin word Niger, Niger, of the same meaning, Islam.
Islam. And gratitude for that grand measure. Just want to camel back off all the Moors. Negro, the prophet tells us Negro, a name given to a river in West Africa by Moors because it contained black water. So, and then, just talking about camelbacking off of Minister Anwar, the Portuguese. Portuguese, upon research, was the first to call our people Negro. And what they did was they took a adjective and made it a noun. So they took something that was meant to describe something or whatever and made it a noun as a person, place, or thing. So that's the prophet tells us it has nothing to do with who we are or who a people are. It is simply a name given to a river in West Africa by Moors because it contains black water, never meant to be the label of a people. We're gonna go to the next word, black.
Islam.
Islam, goddess.
Praises and honors already given. I'm looking for black. Black represents evil, darkness, night, and despair. It's the color used to convey certainty and authority. And when used in opposition with white, it's a symbol of the eternal struggle between day and night, good and evil, and right and wrong. Now, if I'm saying this right also, black in all actuality is all the colors, how I learned it, all the colors of the rainbow mixed. And white is actually nothing, like blank, just the absence of. Islam.
Islam, gratitude for that measure, goddess. Got Brother Yisrael's hand up and Minister Freeman out.
Absolutely dark,
Absolutely dark.
absorbing all light.
Absolutely all white.
Islam, gratitude, Mo man. Gratitude for that. Come on, Minister Freeman out.
Islam and gratitude. I'm Terrell Freeman, of the Maryland Consulate. Islam. Well, more scientists. Woo, black. I love what the goddess El-Bey brought forth because we have some wonderful things about ourselves. Again, I'm going to chapter 1, high honors to our brother, Allah's prophet, our prophet, Noble Drew Ali. Because what the spirit is to you and me, truthfully, that's art, that's Allah. So with that rainbow and those colors we know, there's some interesting things about how those colors, what they are, how they flow, the harmony, how two colors can come together and make another. So when we're dealing with light, we have to apply for ourselves in the physical and a slight inversion, a slight flip. in our understanding. It's different than when we mix physical paints together, physical colors together. And it's very, very interesting because like the goddess put forth, scientifically, we're dealing with light and the absence thereof, because light don't just mean white. Oh no. As a matter of fact, that light, like from our light bulbs, that's just a small fraction of the perspective, the spectrum of light. I know we've heard of some things like infrared. I've never been in the military, but I've heard about it. Ultraviolet. We hear about that and different measurements of our sun. These are all different aspects of light, and there are more. So when we study light, let's also remember what the goddess put forth about how they come together. Because again, light, spirit, that effect from that causeless cause, that rootless root, that even leads to man. Moorish American National as a divine fruit. Look at those paints, look at those colors, look at that rainbow. And there's a lot more in store. You just got to go within and apply these lessons. Gratitude for allowing me to share.
Islam, and gratitude for that grand measure, Deputy. Minister Aliel, and then we're going to take our first break.
Islam, I looked up the etymology of the word black, and it said this: the origin of the word black stretches back to a group of tribes known as the Proto-Indo, Europeans. Islam.
Islam. That's a grand measure, because that word black, actually when you look at the etymology of the word, also it means pale. That was the origin of that word black, pale. So grand measure. The prophet tells us that black, according to science, means death. So Moors, it's 9:49. We're gonna take our first break, and we're gonna come back right at 10 o'clock and get back to class. Islam. So we're gonna take our first break now, and we'll see everybody back at 10 o'clock. Islam. Islam Moors, can you hear me?
Islam.
Islam, gratitude. So we back to class, Moors. Our final word, I'm just gonna, for sake of time, our final word to define was colored, and I'm just gonna give the prophets a definition of colored. Anything that has been painted, stained, varnished, or dyed. So we see in these vocabulary words that we have demonstrated legal status, albinism, Negro, Black, and colored. We see the actual beginnings of what we call the race game today. To try to make one people superior over another people, and that is the race game. So we're gonna go to our resources, and once again, let's think about as we're reading from our resources, let's think about this mythical white race, because more of the truth has to be told to our babies. So we coming from our divine constitution of Moorish America. Once again, that Act 6, very pivotal here. It says, I'm gonna read it first and then I'll bring out some points about it. It says, with us, all citizens must proclaim their nationality, and we are teaching our people their nationality and their divine creed, that they may know that they are a part and parcel of this said government, and know that they are not, here we go, Moors, not Negroes, colored folks, Black people, or Ethiopians, because these names were given to slaves by who? By slaveholders in 1779. Who were the slaveholders in 1779? Europeans. And lasted until 1865 during the time of slavery. But this is a new era of time now, and all men now must proclaim their free national name. See, Negro, Black, colored, African American, Ethiopian, that's not our free national name. That's not the free national name of a people. So the prophet is saying, must proclaim their free national name to be recognized by the government in which they live and the nations of the earth. This is the reason why Allah, the great God of the universe, ordained noble Drew Ali, the prophet, to redeem his people from their sinful ways. The Moorish Americans are the descendants of the ancient Moabites whom inhabited the northwestern and southwestern shores of Africa. Let's go to our second resource, Moors. Chapter 70 from our Holy Quran, the end of time and the fulfilling of the prophecy. It says the last prophet in these days and time, and these days is noble Drew Ali, who was prepared divinely in due time by Allah to redeem men from their sinful ways, and to warn them of the great wrath which is sure to come upon the earth. John the Baptist was the forerunner of Yehoshua in those days, to warn and stir up the nation and prepare them to receive the divine creed, which was to be taught by Yehoshua. In these modern days, there came a forerunner who was divinely prepared by the great God Allah, and his name is Marcus Garvey, who did teach and warn the nations of the earth to prepare to meet the coming prophet, who was to bring the true and divine creed of Islam, and his name is Noble Drew Ali, who was prepared and sent to this earth by Allah to teach the old time religion and the everlasting gospel to the sons of men, that every nation shall and must worship under their own vine and fig tree, and return to their own and be one with their Father God Allah. The Moorish Science Temple of America is a lawfully chartered and incorporated organization. Any subordinate temple that desires to receive a charter, the prophet has them to issue to every state throughout the United States, etc. And know the truth that among the descendants of Africa, there is still much wisdom to be learned in these days for the redemption of the sons of men under love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. We as a clean and pure nation descendant from the inhabitants of Africa do not desire to amalgamate or marry into the families of the pale-skinned nations of Europe, neither serve the gods of their religion, because our forefathers are the true and divine founders of the first religious creed for the redemption and salvation of mankind on earth. Therefore, we are returning the church and Christianity back to the European nations as it was prepared by their forefathers for their earthly salvation, while we, the Moorish Americans, are returning to Islam, which was founded by our forefathers for our earthly and divine salvation. The covenant of the great God, honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be longer upon the earthland which the Lord thy God Allah hath given thee. Come all ye Asiatics of America and hear the truth about your nationality and birthrights, because you are not Negroes. Learn of your forefathers' ancient and divine creed, that you will learn to love instead of hate. We are trying to uplift fallen humanity. Come link yourself with the families of nations. We honor all true and divine prophets. So Moors, just in our divine constitution, also in Act 6 of our divine constitution, also in that chapter 70, nowhere do we hear the prophet, or nowhere did we read where the prophet said white man. He talked about the sin of us still clinging to titles that allude to slavery, Negro, black, and colored. So once again, let's think about our title for today's class. Where did white people come from? And in the title, I have that in parentheses. And then the objective to understand where this mythical race, all right? I'm not speaking radical about anybody, because the European, that's factual. Europeans are factual. We can trace them back, and they have a biological existence just like we do, but this myth of the so-called white people, that's what we're tackling today for our children. So once and for all, our children, are not indoctrinated to feel inferior, but understand that they are great. Excuse me, Mose. We're gonna go into our first YouTube video, and then I'll come back to the floor after that, Mose. Bear with me. Let me pull this up first. In this video, we don't own the rights to it or the copyright to it, but we are using it as fair use for educational purposes only. So I just wanted to put that up so that Facebook could see that and not start acting funny with us. So here's the video, Moles.
I know thy works, and tribulation, and poverty, but thou art rich. Welcome to the Black Excellence and Abundance Channel. Black people in the world are the original inhabitants of the earth. Studies and findings show that the first humans were birthed in Africa, and then from the black humans, other races of the world were formed or mutated. For thousands of years, the world had only black people. The birth of white Europeans, Asians, Arabs, and other variants of light-skinned people was around 7,700 years ago. Cheddar Man is a human male fossil found in Goth's Cage in Cheddar Goth, Somerset, England. Excavated in 1903, Cheddar Man is Britain's oldest complete human skeleton. The remains are kept by the Natural History Museum in London in the New Human Evolution Gallery. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the face of the oldest complete human skeleton found in Europe. He is clearly a black man. Analysis of his nuclear DNA indicates that he was a typical member of the Western European population at the time, probably with lactose intolerance, light eyes, most likely green, but could be blue or hazel, dark brown or black hair, and dark or dark to black skin. However, a subsequent report in New Scientist announced some skepticism from within the scientific community, including the geneticists who worked on the findings. The genetic test identified some of the Cheddar Man's direct descendants among the locals of Cheddar and Somerset. Cheddar Man's remains had been unearthed 115 years ago in Goth's Cave, located in Somerset's Cheddar Gorge. Subsequent examination has shown that the man was short by today's standards, about 5 feet 5 inches, and probably died in his early 20s. Professor Chris Stringer, the museum's research leader in human origins, said, "I've been studying the skeleton of Cheddar Man for about 40 years. So to come face to face with what this guy could have looked like, and that striking combination of the hair, the face, the eye color, and that dark skin, something a few years ago we couldn't have imagined, and yet that's what the scientific data shows." Genetic studies by the University of Harvard in 2015 went a long way in proving that white people came from blacks. They came to this scientific conclusion by focusing on ancient Europeans' modern human fossils and remains. When the black humans reached the north of Europe, they met an icy and cold climate, which was different from their original habitat. During that era in human history, even Switzerland was immersed in ice. The Ice Age, which is known as warm glaciation, had begun around 130,000 years ago and ended about 10,000 years ago. There was less sunny days and colder, making the production of much vitamin D less likely, including the fact that the melanin was still active on the few sunny days. The initial deficiency in vitamin D, which was a result of melanin protection and low sunlight, caused disabilities, fractures, and also premature deaths among the first Africans in Northern Europe, the first people to arrive in Europe. Extensive research shows that white people had a higher vitamin D production than black people when exposed to the same dosage of sunlight. This was why the body of the first Africans in Northern Europe had to get rid of the melanin. Black people populated the whole of Luxembourg, Hungary, and Spain at around 8,500 years ago. The original Eurasians, who were the first Africans to arrive in Europe 7,800 years ago from Western Asia, spread two genes in Europe. The genes are SLC24A5 and SLC45A2, which are responsible for the skin color of the white man. The initial population of the Scandinavian region started around 7,700 years ago and was colder than in other regions of Europe. The initial white-skinned humans in Scandinavia carried the HERC2/OCA2 gene that is characterized by blue eyes, blonde hair, and white skin. The process is what science calls natural selection, and it led to the complete whitening of Europe around 5,800 years ago. Studies show that the three above-mentioned genes are albinism genes and are found in and originated from Africa. The OCA gene simply stands for oculocutaneous albinism and further shows that nature chose to uphold and spread albinism in Europe as a result of environmental constraints. And this then means that albinism, which is the state of the white man's skin, is originally an African trait.
As was stated, the albinism in Europe is strongly related to blonde hair color, as it is in Africa. Also, there are traces of people with red hair in Africa who are not products of race mixing, as is the case with Africans with freckles. So European hair diversity is not originally a European phenomenon, but African. This diversity of hair color is a function of the original genes from Africa, which later showed up in the European white population. This phenomenon can be used to give an account of the green and blue eyes of Europeans. These eye colors are originally African as well and have spread among the white Europeans through the OCA2 gene. We literally come in all sizes, shapes, and colors.
Straight hair among blacks and whites are more of a function of the climate than of genes. The heavy sunshine in Africa made the Africans grow spirally shaped hair to protect the head from excessive heat, while the cold temperature of Europe made the European hair to grow down and cover the external respiratory organs from cold and diseases. But the facts remain that there are black people all over the world with straight hair. The Greeks in the description of the black people of ancient Sudan made mention of black people with long and straight hair. Today, they are found in India and also in Africa, among the Fulani people. So it is obvious that the straight hair of Europeans was formed due to weather conditions during the time of their mutation. Here we have a picture on the left of an ancient black Syrian, which is located in the so-called Middle East. And on the right, we have a picture of the Jarari people who live in southern India, who is said to have migrated from Africa over 100,000 years ago.
Many of us don't know, but the original Asians were also black. The modern-day Asians are usually cast as yellow people, yet they are white. They are also a variant of the original African people. The present-day Eastern Asians possess the OCA2 gene, which also places them as albinos. But the original Asians were black. The Anu people were Japan's first inhabitants, and as you can see, they all are black. The slanted eyes, which are a characteristic of the Asians today, is a result of their living in the stormy mountains of North Asia, found between Siberia and Mongolia. Due to the high altitude, bright light and cold winds cause them to dim their eyes. These two factors, which were dominant in that region, were the reason their eyes turned that way. The Asian facial feature is found predominantly among the Kioisian people of Africa, who are descendants of the Bantus and the Pygmies of the Great Lakes.
The Arabs of today were produced from a mixture of whites and original blacks from Arabia, which are known as Sabians.
About 100,000 years ago, Africans began their migration and journey outside the Black continent and entered Yemen and what is known as Palestine today. They were the first modern humans to occupy entire Asia, moving from Israel to Japan. While they dominated Asia, other Africans traveled with the ocean currents through the Atlantic Ocean and arrived in what is now known as Brazil around 50,000 to 65,000 years ago. This migration resulted in the population of the Americas. So yes, folks, the first Americans were Black. Many years ago, the study of the DNA of the living humans helped establish that we all share a family tree and a primordial migration story. All people outside Africa are descended from ancestors who left that continent more than 60,000 years ago. About 45,000 years ago, those first modern humans ventured into Europe, having made their way through the Middle East. Their own DNA suggests they had dark skin and perhaps light eyes. Today, about 2% of a typical European genome consists of Neanderthal DNA. A typical African has none. So, in summary, that is why we can confidently say, ladies and gentlemen, the first white man was Black. The Black Excellence and Abundance Channel, where Black history is every day.
Islam Moors, can you hear me? Islam. So in that first video, it showed how the European evolved on this earth. You know, so that is traceable evidence as to how, for what reasons, and actually what time period the first Europeans actually evolved on this earth. Now, once again, let's think about, you know, our title and our objective for today's class. Where did so-called white people come from? And then the objective is to understand where this mythical, you know, and I put emphasis on that word mythical race, white people, come from. So I'm gonna show this the first 15 minutes of this first video. Maybe a little bit long. It's a 38-minute video, but we're not gonna watch the whole thing. See, because in this next video, it talks about where this mythical group of people came from that have impacted this world in such a, you know, and I'm not speaking radical, but in such a negative way over the past 1,000 years. You know, because the truth has to be told. In order for this world to heal, the truth has to be told, and our children need to know the truth. So we're gonna get started with this video, Moors.
Worker and prohibited.
Prophet said he's gonna make the European tell the truth. Now listen.
White people did not exist before 1681. Again, white people did not exist on planet Earth until 1681. Number two, any claim that this group called white people, any claim that that group is rooted in biology or derived from genes or biology or is innate or is from nature is a lie. Third and final point, As a matter of foundational law, actually, let me say it this way. White supremacy has been embedded in the United States of America from its founding as a matter of law. Now, I don't expect you to buy all that, to get all that, to believe all that, at least not now. But my job is to share with you the legal history that proves each of those three claims that I begin with. So let's go. Let's get started. We have to begin this conversation in colonial North America, specifically in the colonies, the British colonies of Maryland and Virginia. Both were British colonies, and both shared a number of particular characteristics. First, their economies were rooted in tobacco farming. If you know much about tobacco farming, it requires tremendous human labor. Lots and lots of workers. So those who owned large plantations, big landholders, constantly needed laborers to do the work to grow the tobacco. In addition to sharing an economic base, both colonies had an incredible gender imbalance, roughly 10 men for every woman. Now, let's understand a little bit about the folks who constitute the people in these two colonies. Oh, and by the way, let me give you a year. We're in the early 1600s, okay? The early part of the 17th century, colonial North America. England had, for some bizarre reason that today demographers cannot explain, there was a population boom in England in the early 17th century. So there were lots and lots of poor British people who were on the public doles, who couldn't find a way to make a living, who couldn't feed themselves. So the king in England was quite happy to have them sign a contract of indenture to then go work in the British colonies. And that is what happened. Both indentured and enslaved persons, according to historian Edmund Morgan, were sold and traded like cattle. But of course, not all laborers stand equal in terms of their labor agreement or lack thereof. Those who came under a term of indenture worked for a term of years, and presumably this indenture was an agreement that they chose to enter into. The terms of indenture were largely protected by British law, although the terms that took form in colonial North America were quite different than those that existed in England. For example, in England, indentured servants could marry because that was viewed as the way to produce the next group of workers. In this country, indentured servants were prohibited from marrying, and if women were unfortunate enough to get pregnant during their term of indenture, they added usually about 7 to 9 years onto their term of indenture and 1 year to the father. Slavery, of course, was a status that came with life, work for life. There was neither British law nor international law to prohibit or restrict slavery. What we do know is that at this time period in colonial North America, there were free persons of African descent. We know that landholders freed slaves. They did so in wills. They did so by allowing them to purchase their own freedom or the freedom of a family member. The vast majority of workers, laborers, in colonial North America at this time were British men, British workers, the vast majority. There were some women, there were some European laborers from Portuguese, Dutch, folks from Ireland and from Scotland are also revealed in the records, but the vast majority were British men. There were small numbers of persons of African descent, and there were even smaller numbers of members of native tribes. But in this slide, I'm trying to capture the socioeconomic ladder, and really that ladder should be about as long as this room. The landholding elite are, in today's parlance, that's the 1%. And the vast majority of folks who were in the colonies were laborers. Again, they were British, other Europeans, Africans, and members of native tribes. Here's what I find folks have the most difficult time with. We tend to really struggle with getting a good picture of social life, the social context at this juncture. We're very good at understanding the social relations that exist later, and we'll talk about those in a moment. But pre-Bacon's Rebellion society is something that we generally in this country struggle to grasp. So I'm going to do my best to paint a broad stroke picture of this time period. What we know is that British and African laborers worked, ate, and slept together. Furthermore, the evidence from this period, which covers the first 3/4 of the 17th century, that the anecdotal evidence reveals that they lived under similar conditions and faced the same opportunities and chances to make it once one was free of their term of service, whether free of enslavement or free of indenture. So let's review this. British laborers constituted the vast majority of the populations in both colonial Maryland and colonial Virginia. All men, of course, because the law of coverture, let me tell you something about that law of coverture. The law of coverture is derived from British common law, and it structures marriage. And this is how Barrister Blackstone famously described the law of coverture. In marriage, the man and the woman become one, and the one is the man. You didn't have the right to retain your own wages. You couldn't create estate planning, wills, or trusts without the approval of a man. So all men who were free of indenture or enslavement faced the same opportunities in these colonies as a matter of law. For example, free men of African descent could own servants or slaves, and they did. They could vote, and they did. They could marry persons of the opposite sex. God, and I love that I have to make that qualification now. Woo! They could marry persons of the opposite sex regardless of national origin, and they did. In fact, marriages between men of African descent and women primarily of British descent were not uncommon at all. In one county, 1/2 of the free men of African descent were married to a European woman. There was a challenge to these marriages, but it did not come from the masses. It came from elites, and that's what we're going to talk about next. All right, this little depiction is meant to be a depiction of the lawmakers in Maryland, colonial Maryland lawmakers. They passed a law in 1664 punishing, and I quote, British and other freeborn women who marry enslaved Negro men. The punishment for entering into these marriages was that the woman herself would be enslaved for her husband's life, and any children they have would be enslaved into their 20s. Now imagine that you are a plantation owner. That's not a bad deal. I get more property. I like that. And that is exactly what happened. Rather than deter these marriages, which is the express intent of the law of 1664, rather than deter them, these marriages were encouraged by property owners because that, in fact, that such a marriage increased their property value. This law of 1664 represents, if not the first, certainly the precursor to anti-miscegenation law. These are laws that punished or prohibited marriage between, notice that white people didn't exist yet in 1664, at least as referenced in that law, But most generally speaking, anti-miscegenation law prohibited and punished marriages between a white person and a specific non-white person or persons. Let me be really clear. I read all the time in history books, in academic texts, and I read anti-miscegenation law described as prohibiting interracial marriage. That's not correct. For example, a member of a native tribe could marry a person of Chinese descent. Both were understood as racially distinct, but never did anti-miscegenation law prohibit such kinds of marriages. The only marriages that anti-miscegenation law prohibited were those between a white person and always a person of African descent, and sometimes various other groups. Okay, so just so we're really clear about anti-miscegenation law and its link to whiteness. A couple other things to note about anti-miscegenation law. It's not derived from British law. Anytime we look at law and study history and you see a break from British common law, you always want to pay attention, because it tells us something about the needs and desires of those who wielded power in the colonial context. So anti-miscegenation law was one of these laws. They were passed colony by colony and then state by state. It's a really important area of law for a number of reasons. But for our purpose this morning is because it's where this human category called white first appears on planet Earth, the first time. In addition, anti-miscegenation law is important because it lasted more than 300 years. These anti-miscegenation laws literally shaped the faces of this group of more than 2,000 X number of people that I'm looking at today. The Maryland legislature sought to correct for the encouragement of marriages that they described in that previous law of 1664 as, quote, a disgrace, unquote, to the British people, as an indication that the, quote, British or freeborn woman must be forgetful of her status as free, end quote. So they passed the law of 1681, and in this law, it made it illegal for British and other white women from marrying a Negro slave. And furthermore, the law punished any landholder who encouraged the marriages and any religious authority who performed it. This law equals the invention of the human category white. Did these group of laborers, some of whom were from Portugal, some from Holland, some from Ireland, Scotland, did they have a little genetic transformation that occurred right after the General Assembly in Maryland met, creating a genetic sludge that we can now call white? Virginia passed its first anti-miscegenation law in 1691. In Virginia, the law prohibited both white men and white women from marrying a person of African descent or a member of a native tribe. But lest I leave you thinking that gender equality was being created in this law, let me quickly dispel that. Studies of antebellum courts reveal that, in fact, anti-miscegenation law was that, at least in the language of the law, prohibited these marriages for white men and white women. But here's what we know from antebellum court cases. We know that plenty of white men married and or engaged in intimate sexual relations with prohibited women. However, very rarely were they brought to court and punished under the anti-miscegenation law. Very rarely. So here, pay attention to this. This law, in its enforcement, is largely focused on controlling the relationality and the sexuality of white women and non-white men. Furthermore, think about the enforcement practices that come out of this particular law. What's the result? Who becomes more available for who? We see a further step in locating patriarchal power squarely among and within white men. We've talked about the law of 1664 and the amendment to that law in 1681. And we've noted that the key difference between those two is the reference to the group who's of concern. The language has shifted from British and other freeborn to British and other white women in that particular law. So the question becomes, well, what the heck happened between 1664 and 1681? And the answer is Bacon's Rebellion. This was a massive revolt in the colony of Virginia that lasted more than a year. Let me give some background of the seeds of this rebellion, what helped give rise to this violent outburst. Those who were enslaved, I don't think it's hard to imagine, were by definition of their status disgruntled laborers. And remember that pool of readily available workers from England who were poor and happily sent off in the guts of ships? Well, they dried up. That population surge ended, and there was no longer a pool of laborers from Britain available to handle the work on the plantations in the colonies. The result is they began to impose harsher punishments on indentured servants who were already here, so that relatively minor infractions would result in significant extensions to their years of service. Those who completed their term of indenture or who were released from their status as enslaved were frustrated. They were frustrated because the King of England gave almost all of the farmable land to his buddies. And even if they could find land to grow tobacco on, prices dropped and taxes went up. So land and other opportunities became much more limited. So this guy, Nathaniel Bacon, the guy pointing his arm, he didn't have to search very far for disgruntled laborers. Both those who were enslaved or indentured faced worse treatment, and those freed faced less ability to make a future for themselves. Persons of European and African descent fought in the first phase of Bacon's rebellion against members of native tribes, and then in the second phase of Bacon's rebellion against the British ruling elite. Nathaniel Bacon ultimately died from wounds that he received in a battle, and England sent troops into the colony, and that eventually quashed the rebellion. But not without having made a significant impression upon those who wielded authority and were threatened by this rebellion. Remember, this rebellion lasted over a year, and records from lawmakers in Virginia to the Legal Oversight Authority in England revealed that over 30% of the population were in support of the rebellion. Here were the lessons from Bacon's rebellion. A united labor force is a threat to the form of capitalism taking hold within the colonies. Virginia lawmakers wrote letters to the Oversight Authority in London explaining that they intended to pursue a divide and conquer strategy in order to prevent future rebellion. It's only after Bacon's rebellion that we see the emergence of white people as a group of humanity. Let's think about this for a minute. 1681, some lawmakers invent a new label for a group of people. Imagine, if you will, just for a second, for fun here, that I'm a lawmaker, and I just pass a law claiming that 3/4 of you in this room are crunchies. Okay? So 3/4 of you are crunchies, and the other quarter of you are not. Who gives a damn? Who would care? Some silly lawmaker came up with a label for you. It's really unlikely that it would mean much. But let's say I follow it with this. Those who are crunchies, you can pay no more than $25 a night for that hotel. No more. Those who are crunchies are the first to come into any room at this conference and the first to leave. The first in line at the bathroom, at lunch, at any other line that forms, and the first to get to leave. And that these privileges and advantages that come by virtue of this label that I asserted upon you as a lawmaker continues when you walk out these doors. That it shapes how you are treated and what you get to do for years and years to come. Imagine you're one of the crunchies. Imagine how you might start to feel. Wow, I must be special. Imagine you're not a crunchy. Wow, what's wrong with me? This is not fair. Let's return to the divide and conquer strategy. Laborers, prior and through Bacon's Rebellion, were united. They lived the same darn lives. They faced the same opportunities, rights, and privileges once they were freed from enslavement or free from indenture. That's about to change. A slew of laws were passed in the decades after Bacon's Rebellion and continued to get passed into the first quarter of the next century. The first slew of laws included the prohibition of free blacks from holding public office, the prohibition of blacks and native tribal members from marrying whites, the requirement that whites, upon completion of their terms of service, be paid goods, including guns and gunpowder, a prohibition of free blacks possessing a weapon. We're going to come back to that. The prohibition of blacks testifying against whites. These laws began to give different meaning to these labels that prior to this moment just referenced where your nation of origin was. Not anymore. I want to return quickly to the law that prohibited free blacks from possessing a weapon. What this law did was essentially strip free black men of their ability to hold patriarchal power. Because look, under the law of coverture, here's how things worked. Men were in control, controlled women, their spouse, controlled their children, and had legal authority to do so, including severe beatings, all financial assets and land. The man had the control, but the exchange was that in exchange for that authority, he protects. That's the trade-off for patriarchal power. Stripped, made impossible by virtue of this law. And then let's look at this law that prohibited blacks from testifying against whites. We will see that throughout U.S. history. Mexicans prohibited from testifying against whites, Chinese prohibited from testifying against whites, and then it just becomes mongrels, the label, to include persons of Japanese descent and the like.
So Islam Moors, we're going to take our second break. And when we come back, we'll have a chance to, bring the question on the floor and just hear what everybody has to say about the two videos and any elaborations that they have. So it is 10:49 now, 10:50. We're going to come back right at 11 o'clock. from our break. Islam. Islam Moors, can you hear me?
Islam. Islam, we can hear you. Islam Sheikh, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I'm trying to get this.
All right.
Trying to get this speaker working again. Maybe not. Islam, can you hear me? Just checking for this speaker.
Islam, I still hear you loud and clear.
Islam, gratitude. So Moors, want to get right into the question on the floor. Did we see how the European created and placed himself at the top of his game, the race game? And before I open up the floor, I just want to put this out there. Did we see in that last video, definitely, how that concept of so-called whiteness was used to create this race game that in all actuality was nothing but for financial purposes. You know, so I'm gonna open up the floor first and see if the general is available. Are you there, General, or are you still on a mission? Islam, he's definitely on a mission, being about his father's work. So Moors, we're gonna open up the floor for discussion. And once again, the question on the floor, did we see how the European created and placed himself at the top of his game, the race game? And Moors, the floor is open. Brother Israel, you got something? Okay. We got our Grand Secretary of State, Dr. Sharon Khadijah Bey's hand up.
Islam, can you hear me?
Islam, I can hear you.
Okay, Islam rising, giving praise to God Allah, honors to his prophet, honors for honors due, honors to divine guidance, honors to Act One of Most America. Honor to today's class. It's very informative. And as always, honor to our children and our citizens. I had a question about the first video, how we was talking about how this white came about, right? And I was like, but the person is referring to people as black and white. Will that confuse our people? And then you must be reading my mind, Minister. Then you put the other video on that explains. I was like, okay, it kind of answered my question and answered the question for the ones that's listening. I hope on Facebook or on other airwaves. So I hopefully it answered my question. I hopefully answered those questions that was listening, because it was a little, to me, only talking about me, it was like, well, they still preferring to people as black and white. But then when you put the other video on, it cleared up everything for me. Islam, grand class.
Islam, and gratitude for that putting that out, Minister. You know, when before I showed the first video, you know, I was talking about how even though these scholars that we are pulling on have a lot of true information, they still stuck in the race game themselves and using those terms white and black, but we really know that they talking about Europeans and Asiatics, you know, or Europeans and Moors. So I'm glad that you know, that second video helped out with that, and also your question helped out with that. with anybody that was confused. But yeah, there is no so there is no white man. There is no black man. There's Europeans and there's Asiatics. So gratitude for that question and your measure on that question, Goddess. We got the Council General's hand up, and then we got Minister Freeman L.
Islam, already risen and giving praise to the great God of the universe and giving honor to our holy prophet and giving honor where honor is due. I stepped away from the class for a couple of minutes to handle the personal business I was had to address. However, the little parts, that I did hear and what I am my measure, my understanding, according to the question on the floor. The whole purpose, the European creating these statuses or jurisdictions, basically, because of to preserve their existence. When it comes down to the race game, that's why you hear them speaking about the minority and the majority, although they are states of consciousness, and they correlate with numbers. And that's the reason why they preserve their race, far as their people, far as with the Europe, with the mixing with the Asiatic race, because according to divine law, if every Asiatic man would go into a European woman, they would be erased off the face of the universe, because whatever we touch becomes Asiatic. You know what I'm saying? So all of this is happening. There's no superstition in this science. Is DNA. Our DNA is proven in our DNA. Is proven in divine law and divinity, and etc. It's just a play on consciousness when it comes down to our people. This is why it's so important that our people get an understanding of who they really are, because in their origin and the source from which they come, because this plays a major part in their present state and how they vibe and how they navigate throughout this universe or the system, because everything is done according to law. So, the daughters, you got organizations like the Daughters of a Revolution, and organizations like, even when they came up with the birth control, all of that was designed to control, or what they even call today, what's that, population control. All of that was put in place to control the population, to preserve themselves. You understand? This is why their knowledge or information that they put out there for the masses of the people have to be inferior to theirs. Because if not, if all the indigenous people function or think according to their natural culture or law, they will be erased off the face of the universe. They wouldn't be able to rule. You understand? Because, this is a part of us lining our will up with the deific will. There's nothing in a spooky, that's not a spooky statement, or just a religious statement in the way that religion is being taught today. Lining your will up, the deific will, is lining your mind back up with the universal mind so you can function according to divinity. This supersedes the physical, but could we talking about cause and effect? We're talking about the law of correspondence. We're talking about mentalism. As above, so below. So these explanations, when we're looking at these YouTube videos, and we're looking at or we're reading or studying indoctrination, all of this is linked to the preserving of one's life, status, and jurisdiction, and their very existence. their very existence is tied to their very existence here on the planet Earth. And this is why they have to, that saying, what is that saying? You think that the master or the slave master will make his property or his equal or his slave equal to him? No, no way. And then, you know, the grandmaster chairman, you know, he was set on a mission here in Baltimore by the Prince of Peace. You know, when it came to, he was sent to the Ku Klux Klan, and he sat with the Grand Wizard. And they was in so much harmony and tune with each other because the Grand Wizard, all he wanted the same thing we wanted. It was the preservation of his own people. And he wanted what he wanted for his people, the same as it is with us. We want freedom, we want justice and equality. We want those things for our own very people. So that's what this whole class, to me, the pieces that I heard, what it actually means to me. And I'm sure I missed a lot more, but that's my measure for the parts that I did here. So I just want to say gratitude to everybody who participated, everybody for their measures. Gratitude. Islam.
Islam and gratitude, General, for your measures. They were right on point. That's why the prophet says the time is now for every nation to worship under their own vine and fig tree. You know, you referenced the National Grand Chairman going, I think it was in the 70s sometime, going to meet with the Klan, you know, the Grand Wizard, and both of them had similar ideas. See, because it's not natural to force different cultures to live together. That's not natural. Now, it can happen if everybody is evolved. It could happen. But we need to worship under our own vine and fig tree, just like they need to worship under their own vine and fig tree. You know, not saying we can't do business together or anything like that. But when it's time to go home, we need to go home amongst our own. That's where peace and harmony and security is. You know, so yeah, grand measure. And whatever you didn't see in this class, we're gonna do a similar class for Sunday, General, but we're gonna dig into it deeper. You know, so grand measure, General. And then we got Minister Freeman L's hand up. And before Islam Mo, before you demonstrate, let me just say this, that there was one key point in the second video, the scholar. Not only was she a PhD in probably history, but she was also a Juris Doctor. So she was a doctor of the law, also Juris Law. You know, but she brought up the fact of the pivotal point of creating what we call so-called white people today was one event, and that was a rebellion called Bacon's Rebellion. You know, and understand this, see, because you got to understand the mind of I'm gonna call him the English plantation owner. The English plantation owner didn't care about people's lives. He didn't care about how people felt. All he cared about was property and profit, right? And I ain't talking about profit like Prophet Noble Drew Ali. I'm talking about profit, PROFIT, money. So the English plantation owners did not care about people's lives, did not care about how people thought, any of that. All they cared about was their property and the money that they was making. And this rebellion, Bacon's Rebellion, lasted for a year or more. So imagine if you had a business and right within your business, a rebellion took place for a whole year. That means that you weren't making money for that whole year. And this is why they had to come up with a scheme in order to make their European, and at that time they were British and Scottish and Irish slaves. They had to make them think that they were better than the Moorish slaves, and that's when they came up with this idea of white people, so just wanted to bring that on the manifest. You can go ahead, Minister Freeman now.
Oh man, I love my brothers. Islam, and I love my sisters too. Islam. I'm Terrell Freeman of the Maryland Consulate. This has been a grand class. It's been a grand class to look forward to. All the continuations of our demonstration. This is another aspect of that elephant in the room, and the class has been very educational. It's been very courageous, and it's relevant to who we are, and that is important when we, as Moorish Americans, are just being about the law, being about our Constitution, being about what we're supposed to be about. And as a part of humanity, we see from the universal laws to violations of so-and-so or so-called laws. The truth is within. We can look at these things, we can hear these things together with renewed eyes, ears, and learn something, and still feel this love all the way through. And for some, there's still a looming thought of, all right, okay, but now what we gonna do? That's why all of the lessons we talk about, when Vice Consul General gave a very relevant example of the difference between a prophet and a prophet with the Bacon's Rebellion example. These are things that are not just wordplay and scholarly, and as my Consul General mentioned, it's not just like religious. It's not a matter of dogma. This is the harmony from my place on my own vine and fig tree that I can see, and it is so beautiful. Keeping the love out front, that I'm one with humanity. Now, all of this comes from this more science that it works when you work it. And it's the same thing with the laws. However, all laws don't, again, how we got back into full circle as Black, Negro, colored, African American, see Act 6 of our divine Constitution and bylaws of Moorish America. Unless one liberates themselves from what you thought you knew and all that we've been through, the rest of the things that are available for us to use, others are, and others, we don't, in our minds and our hearts, know them to be true. So the relevance of Islam. Can I ask you to articulate the question on the floor again?
Islam, man. Do we see how the European created and placed himself at the top of his game, the race game?
Islam, gratitude. So The importance of all of this is, you know, with every fact, with every video, with every measure that's given in this class has been effectively communicated, demonstrated that something changed along the way. Want to deal with it genetically? We talk about albinism, something that happens within cellular activity. As it relates to cellular activity, even as it relates to modern science, that's so natural to you and me, like we're the descendants of that. And today, tried and true, without a doubt or contradiction, that's still who we are. Why that's relevant. When we carry that understanding in any way, in this whole big old circle, we can see the same one thing the same way. It may come out a little different. But when we are just ourselves, we know there's room for growth. We know inside it's not natural for us to fall and do just as any might do. So when we give different examples in these cycles and ages and events of time, recent times, Christopher Columbus discovery and change of everything times, that's slavery to us. That's Act 6 to us. There are a bunch of things we, the world, will come together on. But it's going to involve love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice, all as one. And that's where we come from. So the caste game and understanding how black and white, there are no black people, there are no white people. Because the Greeks called the Egyptians black in their own tongue, the tongue that came from our ancestors. Oh, it gets confused, but not really. The truth is one. So don't confuse it in your own mind. Sometimes we got to stop drawing lines. Enough has been drawn. So let's just breathe on it. Let's breathe on it for a second. You know, that's how we've been able to more than get along. See, let me tell you what had happened over here in this class. We had Hebrew Israelites over here, a father and son. The father is not necessarily a self-proclaimed Hebrew Israelite. He's more of the Egyptian Commission, but it's all us, right? You know what I'm saying or what I'm meaning to say. This is how we are yesterday and today. Now, as the Council General so perfectly articulated, as well as others, but as doctors of divinity, the objective is to meet us where we are. Let's be about that circle, and then take things to a higher tone. Now, see, that's civilization. It's not just the commercial where they put on anything less uncivilized. Like it's not anything trivial. That's a profit for profits. But we knew something inside, and it goes beyond any other dynamic. So with my brothers and sisters over here in this children's class, and again, it was a father and son. It's appropriate. We again found ourselves as one. We had this on 3 different screens, on every different phone, and it was the healing balm just to be able to talk and learn and be ourselves, and then get back to this understanding of how we're going to do even better work, how are we going to better repair ourselves. Salvation. So we give high honors to Prophet Noble Drew Ali for making it so plain and clear and doing it seemingly simply, but no, it wasn't simple. It takes work. It takes work to not just say the word to be the word, but to understand beyond all these things that you can hear and to be heard. You don't have to isolate yourself. No, but being yourself is what helps us to better understand what everybody else seemingly is saying or they know. And then there's that fruition of the truth. Okay, well, I'm hearing, well, maybe I'm late. I'm not an expert. I'm not the PhD, but I find this truth in me too. So how we do is we repair ourselves and we are true to the highest thought, the highest essence of us. That's what's tried and true. But now we're back. That's a matter of faith. We know that. Different names. But the fruition of this is that like paradigm shift of shifts of shifts of shifts. It's historically true. So Negro, Black, colored, Dalit, oh, our Hindu, Stan, and Indian brothers know about it too. You haven't seen Chinese and Japanese brothers with afros, dark skin? I'm sure some got hazel eyes too. Like we know this, but now in this new era of time, we have a clear-cut way to be ourselves and to take it beyond a seemingly legal paradigm, a matter of mere words. But it still takes work, and sometimes it hurts. That's how I know very clearly why that system, that thought, this history that we've been talking about and working through was meant for me and my ancestors, willfully and dearly. And as a council general reminded, the prophet said, is for an earthly salvation. But when we're talking that higher nature, that higher constitution, that higher self, you know, it's divinity to us, all us. It's the universal law. It's the way it's supposed to be. Vine and fig tree. Islam and gratitude for allowing me to share.
Islam and gratitude for that grand measure, Deputy. That grand measure of truth. You know, this is a healing balm because, you know, the truth. We hear it all throughout the scriptures and the holy books that the truth is the thing that's going to set you free and keep you free. You know, but if we keep perpetuating these stories, you know, his stories, you know, our people are never going to be free. And if one people is not free, nobody is free. You know, nobody is, and they can think, rest of the world can think they free, but because there's people who are not, no one is free. No one. So grand measure, Mo. Minister Anwar, got your hand up?
Islam, I'm gonna be brief. I enjoyed it, and both of the videos. And excuse me, I wasn't when they talked about the Europeans that came over here as, I think the term used was subjugated.
Indentured servants.
Indentured servants. I was kind of aware of that, but not to that extent, you know. And you see how the Europeans created a place at the top for themselves. Yeah. And I was reading this book here. It's called The Negro Problem. And it had a lot to do with linguistics, you know, changing the names of certain things, you know, and you know, because the prophet says, every word I speak is spirit. That's why a lot of people don't understand certain words that you put on your children. You know, it'll become a part of every part. You know what I mean? And I think the one word that's misused in the English language, and I'm talking all over this planet, is that word kid. You know, I hear it everywhere, you know? I used to say it until I came through the temple, but it still somewhat baffles me that a strong and powerful nation like the Moors, and I know a lot of them died. I know a lot of them had to die, you know, because as strong and powerful as our nation was, to be defeated and put into slavery, sometimes it mystifies me. I was like, wow. But this is a new era of time now. And this information, like the prophet said, will make the Europeans tell the truth. I know you've heard of Tim Wise. He's another European, been working a long time, 25, 30 years against racism. And he get deep. You know, this is the first time I've heard her, but it's also, I forget this European lady's name, but she talked about the blue eye and the brown eye study.
Jane Elliott.
Yeah.
Jane Elliott.
I mean, that's powerful information. Now, and I'm gonna finish with this. If this information, let's say hypothetically, 10 Black people, 10 African Americans get to hear this information, and it's just my opinion, I think maybe 2 or 3 of them out of that group might catch them, you know, because that thing called cognitive dissonance, man, it runs heavy. You're not gonna change my belief. I ain't trying to hit. So anyway, peace and love, more.
Yeah, well, guess what? You said them so-called 10 African Americans, ain't none of them gonna hear it this weekend, because they at the market now getting them pigs in the blanket and all that kind of stuff, getting ready for this Super Bowl. You know, so they ain't gonna hear it this weekend. They may hear it next weekend, but they definitely ain't gonna hear it this weekend. They going to the cleaners, getting their jerseys from the cleaners all pressed, you know they can't afford to go to the game, so gratitude. The general got his hand up.
Yeah, Islam, gratitude, giving honor with everything that was said and everything that will be said. And not only the Super Bowl, but remember, they got this so-called holiday coming up on Monday, Valentine's Day. And although it may seem simple, but, see, this is why the prophet tells us that we choose not to amalgamate. Because what he's talking about, see, every nation of people vibrate according to a number. We talk about numerology. We talking about science. We talking about frequency. He says that all nations don't see God alike. You understand? So, according to your nature will determine how you see the great God of the universe. So just imagine the ones that's closer to, or the original, how they seen Allah then and how they see him now when they have amalgamated. Now remember, the European Grand Channel always say that the European always take God, or the great God, let's be specific, out of everything that he teaches. And that's for the sole purpose of separating you from that high frequency that you're supposed to be thinking on or vibrating to. That's you and your creative state. You understand? So when you go into the Holy Quran, it talks about Barad or Rabo, he and Yehoshua said, who taught you this, mastermind? He said it was the priest, thus told them that. And thus they know, he said it was the priest. It was an outsider or a middleman that was taking you from the creator and hooking you up with the evolution of a monkey. You understand? To take you off of that high frequency once again. See, everything we talk about mentalism. The 7 Hermetic principle is all involved in this. And what I'm saying is, like, let's look at the animal kingdom. You got lion, tigers, and bears. All of them belong to the animal kingdom, but all of them don't think alike. All of them think, but they don't think alike. They think according to their nature. A lion don't try to be a snake. A bear don't try to be, now they trying to even do that, trying to force nature things against itself by mating them, these hybrids. That's what it is. It's a hybrid creation. It's a false creation that they're trying to crossbreed and create another artificial entity. So it can function on a whole nother vibration or frequency. That was the whole purpose why the European knew that it would benefit in his favor if he put his seed in the Moabite woman. He had to do that to take control. He understood the nature of the Moabite woman. He understood his very own nature. So in order to subject a great people like Mr. Anwar just spoke about, a great people, he had to mix his seed. Not only was he mixing his seed, he was mixing his consciousness, his spirit, his nature. You understand? So we have all of these, everything have to function in its natural state according to the frequency and vibration that it was made on. That's what Elohim is all about. That's what Elohim is all about. So, you know, is this is not my law. This is nature's law. You understand? This is nature's law. So the more that you understand, you don't boast because of superior understanding. The more you understand and you know, that means that you're supposed to be the message that you bring, and the more humble you ought to be. Because a wise man doubteth oft and changeth his mind. He know that it would be foolish for him to boast of the things that he know, because it'll be violating his own nature. Good and evil can't exist in the same place. That's why this evil is the only thing that's called evil, is the misuse of good. So if I misuse this good understanding I have of myself, what it would manifest in the form of evil. Not only will I be violating myself, I will be violating everything else around me. So this is the reason why we getting into the scientific aspect of things and going to the very nature of it. And although we discuss some of the things on a surface level, we always take it from the surface to a deeper level, because that's what spirituality is all about. It's just looking at life from a deeper level. A deeper level. And remember, the law of correspondence act on all levels, on the physical, spiritual, and mental. The water is what? Water exists in what? 3 forms: gas, liquid, and solid, based on the vibration. So we're talking about vibrations here, and this is why the prophet also tells us that the things that you see is only appearing to be as the ethers vibrate so and so. Man, I love these classes, man. I love more science. I love this old time religion, Islamism. Gratitude.
Islam, General. You made a point about that water existing in 3 forms, right? During this so-called month of so-called Black history, what they'll tell our people and put it in our children's head that it was a so-called Black man that invented refrigeration, right? But they don't tell them that their people, the Moors, actually came up with the understanding of solid, gas, and liquid. You know, they don't take them back to the origins of what we did. They come up to modern day talking about we invented the refrigeration unit. No, we invented the word ice. You know, the concept of water, liquid, and the concept of gas. You know, the very foundation, you know, the foundational sciences of the earth, we invented. You know, but you don't hear about this in so-called Negro, Black, and colored history. You know, so Grand Measure, General, we're gonna close out with that, but like I said, we're gonna expound on this very same class Sunday for our Sunday Zoom. So anybody watching on Facebook or YouTube, make sure you tune in, because it's it's gonna be off the hook. So Goddess Nicole Williams El-Bey, you can take us out.
Islam, beautiful class. A holy covenant of the Asiatic nation. Ye are the children of one father, provided for by his care, and the breast of one mother have given you suck. Let the bonds of affection, therefore, unite thee with thy brothers, that peace and happiness may dwell in thy father's house. And when ye separate in the world, remember the relation that bindeth you to love and unity, and prefer not a stranger before thy own blood. If thy brother is in adversity, assist him. If thy sister is in trouble, forsake her not. So shall the fortunes of thy father contribute to the support of his whole race, and his care be continued to you all in your love to each other. Islam.
Islam, 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 and gratitude, Moors, for a grand class, and gratitude for all that help you gave us, brother Yisrael.
Islam.
Yeah,
Grand
Islam.
definitions, grand measures,
Islam,
young blood, man.
Class,
Islam, grand class, Moors.
Grand class,
Peace and
more.
love.
See y'all one. Peace and love.
That's
Grand
Islam.
class.
Islam, Moors.
Look, I wish there was more time.
That Islam, Islam.